Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to MGID Talks Live India. This is your host, Pankaj Sharma, with another interesting topic: how to manage brand suitability for digital campaigns. Brand safety is a term that has exploded over the last few years in its use to describe topics in digital advertising. And it has been used to describe everything from ad fraud, viewability, user experience, and placement in the contextual appropriate environment. And today we will deep dive into it with our guest, Mr. Nachiket Deole. He is passionate about building brands and all things digital. He has over 15 years of experience into digital marketing and ad tech and has worked with the companies like LinkedIn, Mindshare, Lintas, to name few in the past. In his current role in DoubleVerify, he is responsible for driving adoption of double verification ad verification solutions in India. In his free time, he loves road trips, and his best ones are Rajasthan and Himachal Pradesh. Himachal is really, really beautiful. So, guys, so feel free to either send him questions on the tech or about your next road trip. Hi, Nachiket. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much, Pankaj and MGID for inviting me here. And many thanks, everyone who have tuned in. And me and Pankaj, we both hope that the discussion will be worth your time. Um,
Yeah. So,
just to
Nachiket,
add,
yeah, please,
go
please,
ahead.
please. So, just tell us about yourself and your role in the company to our audiences, and then we will also take up a lot of questions from our audiences. So, please feel free to put your question in the chat box, and we will be asking this toward our session. Nachiket, over to you.
Great. So, as Pankaj mentioned, it's been about 15 years for me in the digital industry. And before joining DV, I was with companies like LinkedIn, Group M, and good old Lintas, as we all know. And then I joined DV to set up the office in India. DoubleVerify started in 2008. So perhaps we were the first ad verification company to start operations. In APAC, we have offices in Singapore, Sydney, Japan, and India. And we are headquartered in New York, right? And I'm charged with setting up DV's operations in India and driving adaptation of DV's best-in-class measurement and programmatic solutions across the digital ecosystem. Also, of course, the efforts to establish strategic relationships with brands and agencies, to help them maximize their digital investments. So that's where we are in India.
Oh, thank you for the lovely introduction. So, if we talk about, say, India, like right now, it is going through a very tough case, tough stage. Unlock has already started off, and some relaxation is being given in many, many, many states. So, if we talk about COVID, how it has affected overall advertising industry, and what trends you have seen in the recent months?
Well, a lot has been said about the impact of COVID. It has been a hot topic, and absolutely, it deserves to be a hot topic. But fundamentally speaking, talking about advertising, what is advertising, right? It's all about reacting to consumer behavior, right?
Hmm.
And COVID-19 has transformed the way we live, right? So whether consumer behavior has and whether consumer behavior has shifted, advertising spends have adjusted in response, right? Uh, as confinement measures, were introduced across the globe, right? Out of home, cinema, they shrank almost instantly. We saw print falling big time, right? But in the meanwhile, uh, in-home media usage really, really went up, right? and that's true for all the screens. So TV viewership we saw has climbed drastically. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and digital, of course, the consumption has increased even more, right? Use of social platforms, streaming services, gaming platforms, they've risen almost everywhere, right? Um, and that's where we see a lot of brands also are sharpening their focus on digital advertising. Um, with increased focus on digital, uh, brands are also demanding sophisticated measurement systems, transparency, accountability, uh, you know, and 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 as far as the advertising spends are concerned, we have seen tightening of media spends. It started across all the industries. We see sharp drop, across clients in last few months. But then last couple of months, there is a steady recovery as well. But there are still some categories like travel and tourism, hospitality, retail to some extent have still been impacted by this situation. But we've seen some categories increase their media spends as well, right? Like e-commerce, FMCG, pharma, healthcare, right? They've really seen OTTs. We see a massive jump in terms of ad spends from these categories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I particularly we estimate that digital should grow uh, between 30 to 35%. Um, uh, we see time spent on TV going up, and in future we also is or believe that other medias like out of home will also make a comeback. But yes, digital definitely takes the cake here in terms of media consumption in near future.
Definitely, like we have seen some of the brands also going digital. They are predominantly offline brands. So we have seen so many companies coming up and creating their websites and trying to have an e-commerce channel. And as you said, so there is obviously been a shift that in terms of people buying goods or people doing those kind of investments. So how digital media is emerging, or the journey of digital media from say static banner to rich media to native advertising, and somewhere we are seeing more and more innovations now.
Um, digital media industry perhaps has seen more changes than any other industry, I would say, in such a short span of time. Right? Um, and that's why I really admire everyone who is a part of this industry, digital media industry, um, especially because they have to work so hard. They have to evolve, adapt, learn, unlearn. Because there were so many platforms that came up, so many technologies emerged, so many formats, popped up in last few years.
Mm.
Uh, we as you rightly mentioned, right? We started with static banners. Then of course search and keyword buying came into the place. Then we moved to HTML5 to buying likes and followers. And now we are in a space of content marketing and native advertising. Again, there will be a cookieless world where everybody will grapple with the next piece of technology and what they need to do as brands and agencies. So yes, there has been a massive shift, and it keeps evolving as technologies evolve. And that's where, in general, digital media grew up with the technology and how internet evolved. And ad formats grew, became more sophisticated, and it was mostly because of how technology enabled the delivery of ads, right?
Correct.
And
Mm.
that's where the native, the video, the mobile marketing, um, of course, are now picking up, and we continue to see them demanding a greater pie of the advertising budgets.
So as you rightly pointed out, because of the internet revolution, uh, you know, there was not so much of need of brand safety because there were less number of people online. The consumption patterns were not so high. So if you could tell us that how brand safety was addressed in old days and why their need has risen for using these brand safety tools in today's world. So somewhere evolution of brand safety in India.
Very interesting question. So if you look in good olden days, there were really very few issues. Issues like say spam or adult content, or maybe out of the geo ads, below the fold ads, and that's all that a brand or an agency or a publisher had to kind of take care of. Now,
Correct.
cut to 2020, it's a whole new ballgame, right? There is ad fraud, there is user generated content, there is hate speech, inflammatory politics. There are so many issues that one has to grapple with.
Toxic content.
Toxic content, which is the talk of the town everywhere, and truly so, right? Because we see such a polarized content being generated from reliable slash non-reliable sources, but it's out there, right? And when
Yeah.
you as a brand go out there to advertise, you are always vulnerable towards some brand safety attack or the other. So you are safe until you are safe. That's how we call it. Uh, and that's why brands have a far complex challenge in front of them when it comes to brand safety in today's age. And it's not only about brands, right? One also needs to think from consumer standpoint, because more critically, you as a brand owner don't want to start your brand exposure or consumer engagement on a non-brand safe environment, right? Because that's your first exposure of your brand. That's where you will start the consumer journey and engagement with the consumer, right? And if that first exposure, that first impression is not in the right context, it's not in the right environment, then all the actions that are going to follow through probably will not be meaningful for brands when they start measuring those actions, right?
Yeah.
And that's why when we did our survey with Harris Paul, um, about two-thirds of the consumers mentioned that if they see a brand in a non-brand safe or inappropriate content, they will never ever buy that product or brand, which is a massive number to look at. Because we as consumers are extremely aware. We really don't want to fund brands that are, I would
Correct.
say, sponsoring, because obviously it's your advertising money which is funding those
Mm.
platforms who are propagating certain things. That can be terrorism, that can be inflammatory politics, that can be fake news, that can be hate speech, anything, right? Uh, and then that's where we need to start looking at bettering consumer experience, and that betterment of consumer experience will begin from the first ever exposure of your brand in front of those consumers, which needs to be in a brand safe, in a clean, and in a trustworthy environment.
Interestingly, so as you mentioned that there is some fake news, toxic content, there's UCG which happens. Previously any news which is coming out of a media house is like foolproof news. So somewhere it's very difficult to find out that what is the real story, what is the fake story. So some useful tips you would like to give brands to manage brands suitably for their ongoing campaigns or their digital campaigns.
Um, so first and foremost, right, brand suitability is a journey. Uh, Currently in India, we are at a stage where we have, probably it will take time for the brands to go on brand large number of brands, not some of the brands who are already involved. Um, but large number of brands need to start with basics and adopting brand safety practices first. And as we get comfortable with the technology, as we get comfortable with how we can use the data points, then we can start looking at how we can adopt, how we can learn, and how we can evolve uh, into adopting more brand suitability practices. And it starts with understanding your own brand values, right? Every brand has certain brand values on which that brand is built on,
Mm-hmm.
right? And which kind of should become the guiding light to set up your brand policies, right? And that should decide in terms of what kind of content you are comfortable appearing alongside, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Typically, there is a brand safety floor, right? There is a brand safety basic. It's a safety net for you for your brand, right? Which needs to be there constantly, right? Which defines the content alongside which most brands would never ever be comfortable appearing against, right? This can include things like pornography. This can include things like
Correct.
malware or copyright infringement and things like that. On top of that, there is brand suitability, right? It really now depends on each brand in terms of what kind of content is suitable for them. So, for example, if it's an alcohol brand, right? Now, as an alcohol brand, you would never want to be on kids content, or you would never want to be on content around pregnancy or content around probably health and fitness, right? Uh, but uh, but a brand selling kids toys would definitely want to be on kids content, right? Would definitely want to be on family and parenting kind of content. Uh, so the categories are same, but there are two different brands, and for two different brands, both the categories may suit for the requirements or may not be suitable for the requirements, and that's where we evolve from brand safety to brand suitability.
So it's
Uh,
like, going close to the category, understanding your audiences. And as in brand, what kind of, you know, content or what kind of category you want to target, that will actually define that whether it's a brand safe. And then brand suitability for those kind of content will obviously there. And somewhere as an alcohol, like I can't even show my ads. I'm gonna be a very surrogate way of promoting my brand. But still, like as in brand like alcohol brand, I will want to be present on a very different set of content, as you rightly pointed out. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's where we recommend our brands to look at three different aspects, right? One is content classification. So
Mm-hmm.
review what type of content they want to avoid, right?
Correct.
Very importantly, you go beyond that and look at the keyword block list, right?
Keyword.
Only include brand relevant keywords to avoid. Then there are exception lists, right? So all these methodologies can help you build your brand suitability strategies. You also need to kind of keep on asking different questions, right? Is there a specific content that we want to avoid as a brand? Are we willing to run against neutral or positive content when it comes to COVID, right? A lot of
Correct.
brands, when COVID hit us suddenly, a lot of brands came to us saying, "Hey, we just really don't want to be on COVID related content," which is fair enough, right? You don't want to be seen opportunistic, or you don't want to be seen on content which is talking about increasing death rates, the cases, global economic downturn, and stuff like that. But as we started, getting deeper into COVID, there were other aspects of COVID kind of evolved, right? There are positive aspects of COVID also getting talked about, which is how you're getting more time with your family nowadays. How you started pursuing your hobbies, the health and fitness, and that kind of content. And that's
Correct.
where you need to pivot towards more flexible approach and say that, hey, agree, as a brand, we really don't want to be present on negative COVID related content, but definitely there is a merit to be present on content which is talking positive things about in COVID. And so you need to kind of keep asking those questions and build your strategies around it.
That's interesting. Like, finding a positive within the negative one. Like, for, as you mentioned, COVID is very negative for people, but looking at the recovery rate, like recently, India has surpassed, the recovery rate is more than actually people coming in. So
Yeah,
that's quite interesting. For the brands can definitely adapt these kind of strategies. Uh, so let's talk about ad fraud. So ad fraud is something this year alone, digital ad fraud will cost publishers and advertisers 6.3 billion USD. Yeah,
yeah.
that's like an B billion with the B. And according to the recent report by the Mobile Marketing Association, marketers are losing almost 20% of their digital advertising budgets to ad fraud. And this industry has identified advertising fraud as one of the major challenge that needs to be addressed in 2020 and 2021. And this is like, driving most of the brands and, advertisers also crazy. So how brands can reduce ad fraud and increase viewability?
Absolutely. I think uh, so. Across any industry you take, if there are dollars, there is a fraud, right? Um, and specifically talking about digital and advertising space, we firmly believe that fundamentally, an advertiser or a marketer has a right to showcase their ad to a real human, right? If I'm giving you $1 to spend on advertising, I expect as a marketer uh, that my ad will be visible by a real human. Forget about target audience, forget about NGO, but at least it should be a human. Then there will be a wastage, etc., etc. That's the secondary part.
Yeah.
But what is happening with the fraud is the money that you're spending is not even been seen by a real human. It's been consumed by the bots, and that's a major problem. So statistically, your brands, one third of your digital budgets uh, can be eroded by non-human traffic, right? Which is massive, and it's a big concern for brands. Uh,
Yeah.
and when I joined DV, I was shocked to understand, the kind of fraud that's happening. I never knew that there are 7 types of frauds that can happen in digital media, right from emulator devices to hijack devices to bot fraud to data center frauds. There's so many things. And we as marketer probably are not aware of all that's happening around. Um, so the first things first is there has to be um, accountability that needs to be built in within the system, and for which there needs to be a ad verification or brand safety or a fraud leader, right? Um, Ideally, it needs to be a CMO or head of digital or head of media, who can relate to fraud, who can understand what fraud is, uh, how negatively it can impact the media spends, uh, and who should be able to set standards for the media quality, right? So once you have internal house in order, once you understand, and of course it won't happen overnight. It won't happen on day one, and that's where the entire ecosystem needs to come together. It needs to be uh, the client, the agency, the publisher, and the technology and the ad verification partners that they work with. Need to come together to help the brands to set the ground for them.
Mhm.
Uh, and for that, it's really critical to work with the trusted ad verification companies who have right technology um, to protect your brands across, right? Whether it's brand safety, whether it's fraud, uh, and all environment. It can be programmatic, it can be non-programmatic, direct buys, videos, social, everywhere, right? and as a brand, you need to look at your investments holistically, and not really look at it in isolation. And then once you
Definitely.
have things in order, then I think you will start realizing how you are getting better ROI when your ads are fraud free, when your ads are in brand safe environment, when your ads are more viewable,
Mhm.
and that's where you will start building more confidence. That's where you'll start building more and bettering the technology and evolving with that technology.
Sure, sure. Precisely. And this is very important to understand whether, you're showing the ads to an human. Like we also have an anti-fraud team who continuously work, at the back end and try to find out that if there is anything, fraud which is happening because our platform deals into majorly into clicks. So that's quite interesting. So talking about brand safety and brand suitability, how brands can embark their journey from brand safety to say a brand suitability.
Very interesting. I think I touched upon it briefly,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the previous questions, right? But see, I think brand safety and suitability both are really really important, right? As you rightly mentioned, it's a journey. It's not a destination,
Correct.
right? While brand safety may seem like the most pressing issue, um, brand suitability is also very very important, given that consumers hold you accountable for how you
Correct.
appear on, right? Because for consumers, it's the brand who are responsible in terms of where they appear, where they show their advertisements, right? It's not anybody else's job, but it's the brand's job as per consumers. And this is the outcome of the survey we did with Harris Poll, uh, right? Brand safety is typically the content that you would never ever want to be aligned with, right?
Correct.
Um, and frankly speaking, it should also be discouraged from being able to be monetized for publishers, right? But brand suitability is more about understanding the content that may not be right for your brand specifically, right? It entirely depends on the brand and their policies. And for that, we spoke about the alcohol brand versus a kids toy brand as an example, right?
Correct. Correct.
Um, and of course, there is this challenge of ongoing news cycle, right? Topics in news change like every hour, every day, right? And it's very difficult to predict, right? What is on fire today may not be there on air tomorrow, right? And there are so many factors that are changing these dynamics. So your brand safety and suitability strategy needs to be very, very agile and nimble enough to adapt to new and changing headlines. Um, and this can be, sometimes be really, really complex than you would even imagine, right? Especially if you're talking about news, political content. Any day there can be changing dynamics in neighboring countries, right? That can impact so many brands that are advertising upon. Uh, many brands want to support trusted news outlets, and that's something that we have been seen across, right? There are so many brands
Hmm.
who came in support of some news content, and they were pretty vocal about it, right? Uh, so it's about striking the right balance, right? And using tools and technologies that allow you to control brand safety and suitability with precision. Um, so work closely and communicate with your ad verification providers who will support, and help you draft your brand suitability strategy and preferences. That's something that we recommend all the brands.
Yeah. So you also, mentioned about programmatic, and I remember when programmatic started in the digital, uh, everyone said that everything is gonna go programmatic. The direct buys will not happen. But what we have seen is like as a result, we have seen that there's a huge concern of brand safety by marketers on programmatic campaigns. So, how it can be reduced?
Well, so programmatic has been a buzzword. I don't know for how long. Um, so programmatic, we started pitching programmatic as audience buying, um, cheaper inventory, consolidated inventory, better ROI, whatnot promises were made. But all said and done, eventually what we see is a programmatic guaranteed buy, right? That's what we are. And obviously there are reasons to it. I don't blame anyone. It's to do with uh, a lack of visibility in supply path. It's to do with lack of transparency in the technologies that we have. It's to do with lack of accountability by by all the parties, right? And that's where I think we as an industry are evolving and taking efforts to tackle all the issues together. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it has so much, going on for it, right? Not the least of which is the ability to create an efficient demand-based buying environment, right? But uh, to your point, it can be difficult, right? Especially since programmatic buying often, um, introduces intermediaries into the buying process. A publisher might be part of a network, which in turn part of supply side platform, which actually plugs into an exchange, which is then accessed by a DSP, right? So there are so many hops between the buyer and the publisher. So transparency can get really muddy there, right? And um, part of getting comfortable with programmatic is knowing your supply path, is knowing your supply sources. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's being comfortable with uh, with the technology and with the transparency that the technology can bring on table. And then there are ways to control this, with things
Mm-hmm.
like PMPs and PG.
Mm-hmm.
But more critically, that probably will be a compromise. But working with again trusted third party ad verification providers who are kind of working with your DSPs can really help you evaluate the quality of impressions, and that too at scale. So you really don't have to depend on say one, two, three, or four limited sources for traffic, but uh, you can really uh, live the promise of programmatic and also have peace of mind at night saying, hey, I'm sure that while I'm running campaign on programmatic, but my ad won't appear on the content that I don't want to be.
Correct, correct. Definitely. So that's it. So for all the audiences, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the comment box, and we will be taking it. So you briefly touch on the publishers. As you said, there are a lot many intermediaries. Like how publishers can ensure brand safe environment for advertisers, because
Very
there's so
interesting
much of
question.
content, very so much of content available, and for it is brand safe for say X client, for Y client it's not a brand safe, and there are like different definitions. So some tips you would like to give us?
Um, I think making sure that the environment is controlled and safe by having a robust ad verification toolkit is a must now for all the publishers, right? The same information that is available to advertisers uh, that is also available to publishers, right? It is
Mm-hmm.
definitely worth investing in this to have that level of transparency and to understand how advertisers are viewing your inventory as well, right? Um because if you as a publisher are not prone towards working with ad verification partners, uh, then intrinsically, right, a client would doubt the intention, right? Try and understand when you say no to something, which is bringing in more transparency, which is making the ecosystem better, and there is a resistance coming from somebody, then obviously there will be uh, something that the client will flag off in their minds. Uh, uh, so um, also, you need to ask sales teams certain questions to discuss, with brands and agencies, like what media quality metrics are you measuring, and what are your goals, right? As a publisher, you need to go and ask these questions. Uh, who are you working with to measure ad performance on our site, right? Right. Can we leverage our own measurement tools to supplement your information, right? Not necessarily you have to rely on third party, right? You have to have your own source of truth somewhere. um, and transparency, right? Transparency throughout the transaction uh, is what will drive the greatest value and trust for the advertisers and for the publishers alike, right? So yeah, in fact, all our clients have most of our clients have mandated uh, to the agencies and to publishers that they have to deploy DoubleVerify tags for every single campaign that they run. And the publishers who refuse or don't accept the tags, our clients just don't run campaigns with them. So you need to ensure that you comply with all the third-party measurement technologies. Uh, you work with them closely. You certify your platforms with third-party measurement technologies, and then that's kind of proof to the pudding in terms of hey, the platform is completely brand safe, fraud-free, highly viewable, and brands and agencies can blindly trust on that platform and allocate digital budgets.
Oh, I have just gotten one interesting question from one of our users. Uh, does brand suitability help in increasing campaign effectiveness or consumer experience?
Mm, Definitely yes. Um, so 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 imagine, right? As I said before, uh, we are talking about digital transformation. We are talking about martech. We're talking about making digital India, transforming all the companies into digital companies, and that the source of that is the data that you have, right? And where will you get the data? It's a first party data that you need to collect, uh, and to collect that you need to advertise. So your input is your first impression. Your first impression is your first exposure in front of the potential consumer. And now, if that is compromised, imagine the value chain that it's going to build, right? So you need to create a better user experience, and a better user experience will begin from the better first exposure. If that brand exposure is in a healthy brand safe environment, it's viewable, then definitely all the actions that are going to follow through will be much more add a lot more value to the data that advertiser is collecting, and also it will result into the quality output and sales for the brands eventually.
Definitely. One more question we have gotten, like in the current scenario, which media is gaining audience trust? Like it's like print, TV, digital. Because if you could recollect recently, many newspaper came up with those kind of TVCs that print newspaper means authentic. TV guy said whatever news we give is authentic. But what has happened in last few months? You will as an customer, you will be surprised whom to believe, whom not. So, as per you, which of the media is gaining consumer audience, and do you see that advertising spends increasing on digital or on those mediums?
Um, See, we as Indians have grown up with newspapers. Uh, while there are so many devices out there, we still love the feel of holding the print book, the hardcover book. Uh, we still love that newspaper coming in our homes in the morning. Yes, while definitely there is a drop in usage, but I wouldn't I wouldn't say that traditional channels like print and OH probably will go away.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they will not be as big as what they used to be, but they're not going away. There will be slowly and steadily there will be a revival. But especially coming to print, I think it needs to evolve because while uh, as we're looking at younger and younger population adopting to technologies, they need to look at the future and look at their strategies because the kids today are all digital kids, right? While we might like a print copy in hand, but probably 5-10 years down the line, when our kids grow up, they probably will not be feeling the same way. TV definitely has seen spike in last few months, um, but all said and done, and we all know that the consumption on digital has grown phenomenally, right? And it's not only us who have been part of digital uh, and who have grown up with digital. Even our parents or our kids, their screen times have gone up. Our parents probably who would still be comfortable going out in the market and buying grocery are now ordering it online, right? So it's not only a particular segment of users are glued towards digital. No, what pandemic has done is getting everybody to access internet, getting everybody to be on digital in some form or the other, and that's why I firmly believe that digital is here to stay. It's going to grow, and brands need to really sharpen their digital strategies because the whole consumer behavior has moved to digital now.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we just have 1 or 2 minutes left, and we are getting more questions. Possibly, we can answer those offline. So, any last tips you would like to give to our advertisers and publishers to take the first steps towards brand safety and moving towards starting their journey from safety to and moving towards brand suitability?
Um, okay, so for brands, uh, I think as a digital marketer, one needs to demand transparency and authenticity in the media that you're buying, right? One needs to set standards, keeping the consumer experience in mind. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
One needs to create, you know, media quality practice internally, uh, and work with agencies and ad verification partners to kind of set that up for you, and that's where you will start your journey towards uh, brand suitability from brand safety. Uh, Make sure that you are not measuring only brand safety or only ad fraud or only viewability in silos, right? An authentic impression needs to consider all three factors. It needs to be brand safe, it needs to be viewable, it needs to be ad fraud. It can't be either or. Right? So look at your media quality, considering all three parameters and not either of it, and then sit on a journey. And we as an ecosystem kind of will be kind of rallying to make it a better industry with you, right? And for publishers, definitely, bring more confidence in your inventory, uh, bring more uh, bring more transparency in your inventory, uh, work with third party measurement partners, get your inventory certified, get your platform certified, uh, and go and talk about the quality of audiences, quality of impressions, quality of inventory that you can bring on table, and that can be your pitch to the brands.
Definitely, it was a very good conversation, and I, frankly speaking, didn't realize the time. Our time is up. Thank you so much, Nachiket, for making it to the show. It was pleasure having you here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much again, Pankaj and MGID. I love this interaction, and I hope all the audiences also took some value out of it and didn't waste their 45 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Stay tuned.